Ecuador's two presidential hopefuls are set to debate for the last time before the April runoff. A shipment of over a million doses of the Sinovac and Astrazeneca vaccines arrives in Colombia. And Pentagon chief meets with Afghan officials in Kabul. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Ecuador's two presidential candidates are set to debate tonight in Guayaquil as the April runoff nears. Economist Andrés Arauz of the left-wing Union for the Hope Party and former banker Guillermo Lasso of the right-wing Creating Opportunities Party are facing off for Ecuador's highest political position. Economic issues and healthcare crisis surrounding the pandemic are expected to dominate tonight's debate. In the first round of voting held in February, Arauz secured a 32.72% of the vote to Lasso's 19.74%. Ecuador's Health Minister Rodolfo Farfán resigned this Friday as prosecutors investigate allegations of favoritism in the rollout of coronavirus vaccines. Farfán resigned after police raided the health ministry and a hospital. COVID-19 vaccines have caused political turmoil in several South American countries, including Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina. A shipment of 1 million doses of the Sinovac and AstraZeneca vaccines arrived in Colombia. The government has said it aims to vaccinate 35 million people this year, including hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan migrants and refugees who are currently living in the country. Colombia was the first country in the Americas to receive a shipment of coronavirus vaccines from the United Nations-backed COVAX initiative, and its government expects to get 20 million doses of vaccines by the end of this year through the initiative. In Brazil, Rio's iconic beaches have been closed to the public to curb the spread of COVID-19. This is the first time Rio's beaches were closed again since they reopened in July 2020. But Brazilian authorities are looking to curb a recent spike in number of hospitalizations, with the health system already working at full capacity. Military and police and municipal guard patrol the beaches, asking those who ignore the new restrictions to leave. According to the Ministry of Health, Brazil recorded 2,724 deaths in the last 24 hours, reaching over 290,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic.
It's the time to reduce the circulation of people in the streets. It's not the time to do sports on the beach. It's not the time to divide in the ocean. Now, it's the time to stay home. We have a new variant of the virus, the P1 variant, that's circulating in the city intensively, a new variant that can be worse than the one before.
Political parties in Venezuela are preparing for the upcoming regional electoral process. At the same time, institutions continue with their renovation processes or the confirmation of new authorities. We have more details with our correspondent, Leonel Retamal.
Political leaders from 20 opposition parties in Venezuela recently signed an agreement to stand united in the upcoming elections for regional governors and mayors that will take place in Venezuela this year, following the path of those who participated in the parliamentary elections of December 2020. They seek to isolate extremist opposition groups that promote violence or a total boycott of the vote.
We do not support insurrectional or unconstitutional methods, or foreign invasions, or other countries harming our sovereignty in detriment of our people, who have only prevented us from successfully taking power, prolonging the suffering of the most vulnerable and dispossessed.
The international community is called to pay attention to these processes and not to those who continue to demand sanctions against the country.
The Venezuelan people are peaceful. We believe in our constitution and we want to solve things through the constitutional path. These actions are by a minority that does not represent us. We are more than 30 million people. The international community does not have to sit down and talk with just 5 parties. We are more than that. We are more than 30 opposition parties. They have to listen to all of us, the population in general. We are in crisis and these sanctions have aggravated the situation.
This is happening alongside the work of several parliamentary commissions, such as that in charge of carrying out the process to renew the National Electoral Council. 75 nominations for rector of the Electoral Council have been accepted, and the process is still open to renew this state power.
For both this committee and this National Assembly, the only objective is that we can live in peace, that we take a step to distance ourselves from those who have made a living from violence, and think the solution is not democratic. For this committee and this assembly, democracy is the only path in an electoral center.
All this is part of a process of dialogue and normalization between the public authorities of the Venezuelan state after the installation of the new National Assembly on January 5th. Commissions investigating the management of the former legislative administration are joining efforts of the Dialogue Committee, which seeks meeting points between the different sectors of society. This analyst explains it the following way.
A big debate is happening right now in Venezuela for the relegitimization not only of the National Electoral Council as the regulatory body, but also the different branches of the state to move forward as a single voice, without denying the different voices within Venezuelan society, but with a need to see ourselves, to recognize ourselves as a single country.
Meetings with business representatives, churches, universities, political parties, and different social and economic sectors in the country have already taken place as part of this process.
36,000 doses of the Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccine arrived in Paraguay on Friday to the World Health Organization's COVAX platform. A COVID-19 upsurge has pushed the South American country's health system to the verge of collapse. According to health authorities, the doses will be first administered to health workers. The batch is in addition to 20,000 doses of the Chinese Sinovac vaccine donated by Chile and 4,000 Sputnik 5 doses purchased from Russia, which will allow the vaccination of 90% of medical personnel involved in the fight against the pandemic. And we'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. The Republic of Congo have gone to the polls to vote in a presidential election that has been boycotted by the main opposition. Access to the internet and social media was cut hours before polls opened at 7 a.m. local time. The incumbent Denis Sassou is widely expected to win against 6 contenders, led by economist Guy Brice Parafide-Coleleas, who revealed Saturday that he is gravely ill with COVID-19. After first coming to power in 1979, Sassou Nguesso was forced to introduce multi-party elections in 1991 and was defeated at the ballot box a year later. But he returned to power in 1997 following a prolonged civil war. He has won every election since, which the opposition have mostly slammed as fraudulent.
Bon, la particularité, c'est qu'il y a...
What's different in there are 7 candidates, no less. So I think that all I have to do as a voter is to choose the one I think can do what is needed for the Congo.
Ce qu'il faut pour le Congo.
Since we have subscribed to democracy, and democracy is decided by the judges, I have come to vote for the candidate of my choice.
Meanwhile, Guy Brice Parafide-Coleleas, the leader of Congo's main opposition party, have encouraged his supporters to vote for change from his hospital bed after contracting COVID-19.
My dear compatriots, I am in trouble. I am fighting death. But nevertheless, I ask you to stand up. Go and vote for change. I will not have fought for nothing. I will not have fought for nothing. Stand up as one. Do me a favor. I fight on my deathbed. You fight for a change. Go ahead. The future of your children is at stake. Fight. Thank you.
Allez-y. Il y va de l'avenir de vos enfants.
In the United States, hundreds of people have rallied in Atlanta, Washington, and other big cities to condemn violence against Asian Americans. 3 massage parlors around Atlanta were targeted Tuesday, and a 21-year-old suspect was arrested. Robert Aaron Long faces 8 counts of murder and 1 charge of aggravated assault. Of the 8 fatalities, 6 were women of Asian descent. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris visited Atlanta on Friday and condemned the shootings and the rising number of hate crimes against Asian Americans, which have more than doubled during the coronavirus pandemic.
And then those women, the 6 Asian women that were killed, they not only faced racist hate crimes, but they kind of stand at the intersection of racism and misogyny, and then the whole not your fetish and not your scapegoat. That's where Asian women are. They're at this intersection of racism and misogyny.
It's telling me that people are fed up. People won't be silenced anymore. People are looking for change. People are yearning for change and healing. People want to do something, and I'm glad to be the one who sparked, and I hope that this conversation will go on as we will.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has arrived in Kabul on his first trip to Afghanistan as Pentagon chief. In Kabul, Austin met with senior Afghan government officials, including the country's president Ashraf Ghani. The meeting comes amid questions around how long U.S. troops will remain in the country, but President Biden said it will be difficult for the U.S. to meet a May 1st deadline to withdraw its troops. However, he added that if the deadline, which was laid out in an agreement between former President Donald Trump's administration and the Taliban, is extended, it will be by a lot longer.
There's always going to be concerns about things one way or the other, but I think there's a lot of energy focused on doing what's necessary to bring about a responsible and a negotiated settlement to the war. I won't endeavor to message the Taliban. I don't have a response to that. I will just tell you that, as I spent the day with General Miller, I'm confident in his ability to accomplish his mission with the resources he has, and I have great confidence in his ability to protect our troops.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has insisted that the U.S. government must lift all sanctions before Tehran returns to its commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal.
They should know that maximum pressure has failed up to now. And after this, if this new U.S. administration wants to continue maximum pressure, they will fail as well. And Iran will stand stronger and more dignified than before. This policy entails that the Americans must lift the sanctions, all the sanctions, and then we will verify. And if they are truly lifted, then we will return to our JCPOA commitments.
In Syria, at least 5 people have died and 5 others got injured after artillery shells fired from government-controlled areas hit a hospital. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the rockets landed at the entrance and in the corridor of the hospital in Ataref, a town in rural western Aleppo. The explosion killed at least 5 civilians, including a child and a woman, and it also injured medical staff. Attacks on hospitals are common in the Syria conflict and are mostly blamed on government and allied forces. The U.S.-based Physicians for Human Rights have documented 598 attacks on at least 350 separate facilities in Syria since March 2011. The Palestinian Health Ministry has begun administering its first coronavirus vaccines received through the Global COVAX initiative. The World Health Organization and its partners who run the COVAX program delivered 61,400 vaccines to the Palestinian Authority on Wednesday, with 21,300 of them were shipped to the blockade Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. The other 40,000 shots are a boost to the West Bank, where the Palestinian Authority has been struggling to purchase vaccines. The vaccines delivered under the COVAX were Pfizer and AstraZeneca, rolled out in the Palestinian territories for the first time.
Absolutely not enough vaccines at the moment in Gaza, so that's why we're only prioritizing the globally agreed groups, such as the healthcare workers, particularly the frontline healthcare workers, the elderly, and the people with the underlying health conditions. So far, we have very few vaccines available in Gaza, and therefore we cannot yet start with mass vaccination campaign for the overall population. We only focus on the priority groups.
Thousands of Israelis have rallied in Jerusalem to demonstrate against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ahead of next Tuesday's general election. Prime Minister Netanyahu is being accused of corruption and failure to manage the coronavirus pandemic. The elections, therefore, in less than 2 years, are widely seen as a referendum on Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister. The polls show Netanyahu's right-wing Likud party in the lead, projecting that it will win around 30 seats in the 120-member parliament. The centrist Yesh Atid party, the largest in the anti-Netanyahu bloc, is projected to win around 20 seats. I will take a short break now. Join us again after this. Security forces in Myanmar have shot dead an anti-coup protester as demonstrators trying to march through small, narrow streets to avoid confronting riot police. One man was killed on Sunday in the central city of Monhua, and at least 2 people were injured in a clash with security forces at barricades. Meanwhile, protesters in Yangon's northern Insane Township adopted the tactic of marching through small, narrow streets to avoid confronting the security forces as they stage a rally. Myanmar has been in trouble since soldiers ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi last month, triggering nationwide protests demanding a return to democracy.
Now the military have threatened to shoot us if we were to gather or stage a protest. But if we don't come out and protest and show how much we hate them, they will think they've already won. Now we'll try to protest as much as we can. We'll let the military know how much we don't agree with them. We don't want them, we won't accept them, and we hate them very much.
Thousands of women have taken to the streets in Istanbul to protest against Turkey's decision to withdraw from a landmark European treaty protecting women from violence. The government sparked domestic and international outrage after announcing the decision on Saturday, the latest victory for conservatives in Erdogan's Nationalist Party and their allies, who argue the treaty damaged family unity. The 2011 Istanbul Convention, signed by 45 countries and the European Union, requires governments to adopt legislation prosecuting domestic violence and similar abuse, as well as martial rape and female genitalia mutilation.
As women, we now think that the withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention is a direct attack on women's rights and a direct attack on the rights of modern young women in particular. This, of course, makes us feel insecure and like our rights are appropriated by the government.
We were struggling every day so that the Istanbul Convention would be implemented and women would live. We now hear that the Istanbul Convention has been completely repealed. We are very angry today. We can no longer bear even one death of a woman. We do not have any tolerance left for this.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has heavily condemned Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. According to women rights groups, last year 300 women were murdered in Turkey, and the rate is speeding up, with 77 killed already this year. Around 100 Lebanese mothers have marched against the country's ruling class in Beirut on the eve of Mother's Day. The mothers, who marched along with their children from an area once on Beirut's dividing line during the civil war to the port, which saw a catastrophic explosion last year, where more than 200 people died and thousands more were injured in the incident, which was blamed on official negligence. Lebanon is battling its worst economic crisis in decades. The national currency has lost almost 90% of its value against the dollar on the black market, and consumer prices have soared. As a result, some 55% of Lebanese now live below the poverty line.
I am here to represent mothers' voices. Every Lebanese mother from 1975 until today, every persevering and patient mother, every immigrant mother, or whose children were forced to immigrate, every mother of a martyr or injured, every mother who is a medic, a nurse, a doctor, or a teacher in this current period of death.
Health workers from Kosovo have traveled to Albania to receive their COVID-19 vaccines. Kosovo remains the only European country that has not yet started to vaccinate its population, but the Albanian government decided to help out. On March 20, about 200 Kosovo doctors were bused to Kukes, an Albanian town close to the border with Kosovo, to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Kosovo is yet to receive its first batch of Astrazeneca vaccines through the World Health Organization's COVAX initiative. German police have clashed with protesters at a mass demonstration against coronavirus restrictions in the city of Kassel. Police used batons and fired water cannon at people trying to break through barriers and throwing bottles. The protests attracted between 15 and 20,000 demonstrators from all the political spectrum. Some of them say that they don't believe the pandemic is real, while others claim to curbs imposed to stop the spread of the virus infringe on their civil rights. Chancellor Angela Merkel and the leaders of Germany's 16 federal states are meeting on Monday to discuss the next steps in the fight with the pandemic. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, protesters also scuffled with police in central London during a demonstration against lockdown measures. Thousands of people took part in the demonstration despite warnings from authorities not to congregate and risk spreading the coronavirus. England has been under a strict lockdown since January, with all non-essential businesses closed and people asked to stay home. In Australia, Sydney residents living in low-lying areas have been evacuated as the city braces for its worst floods in decades. Evacuation orders came after the Warrakamba Dam, which provides much of the drinking water for Sydney, spilled over Saturday afternoon following record rainfall. Floodwaters have already risen in several areas, prompting mass evacuations, and officials said another 4,000 people could be told to leave their homes in the coming days. And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.